Excuse me. All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. Returning to the podcast is Steve Girard, a U.S. Army veteran and veteran battlefield guide. I would also like to say that Steve is a good friend now. Steve has studied the American Expeditionary Force for several decades. Decades, folks, decades. Okay. He's been the unit historian for U.S. Army 2nd and 4th Infantry Divisions, the 10th Mountain Division, the 101st Airborne Division, the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and the 5th and 6th Marine Regiments. Steve also served as a special historical consultant, World War I, to the History Division, Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. He's worked as a historian and researcher for the World War I 4th Brigade Marine 2nd Division, for various military historians and authors like Mr. George B. Clark, Mr. Kevin Selden, Mr. James Gregory, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Owen, United States Marine Corps, retired, Lieutenant Colonel John Swift, United States Marine Corps, retired, Lieutenant Colonel Walt Ford, U.S. Marine Corps, retired, and Mr. Mike Miller. Steve joins us today to talk to us about the history of the AEF 2nd Division, now known as the U.S. Army's 2nd Infantry Division. So, welcome back, Steve.
Well, it's been a long time. Thanks, Mike. It's been about, going on 3 years since I've been back with you on the podcast. So yeah. It's great to be back here. And thank you for that great intro. Yeah, been there, done it all, being in the Army and all that. Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's like you said, the 2nd Division is my love and my passion. And also out there working with military historical tours in out of Woodbridge, Virginia. So thanks for having me back, though, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into let's get right into talking about 2ID. So this is a cool conversation because back in my days in Korea, like I was in the 2ID up in
same here,
Camp Casey. So
I was north of the river.
Wow. Yeah, that's, man, I made it up there.
Yeah, I was in 3rd Brigade. Yeah, north of the river. 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry up there. So we were north of the river, up at Camp House. So that's where I was in.
All right. So, Steve, what's drawn you to focus on the history of the 2nd Division, AEF? And you've gone pretty deep into its 4th Marine Brigade as well. What has been like the interest for you, man?
Well, that goes back to when I was a kid, because I have, my father, my late dad, on his side of the family, my great uncle, who was Corporal John Francis Girard. He was in the 17th Company, which is Company A, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, and he made it all the way from Belleau Wood as a replacement, and to the Meuse Argonne, and he got gassed outside of Bainville on 4 November of 18, and he got evacuated out. And had he not been gassed, he probably would have been up there at the Meuse River crossing on the night of the 10th and 11th. Probably been killed or wounded. And that's on his side of the family. And my mother's side of the family, that's my great grandfather, and 2nd Lieutenant Colwell C. Robinson, very handsome young man. Grew up here on the East Coast. Then went to UConn and Stanford. And when the war broke out in 17, he went into the Marine Corps, got commissioned there as a 2nd lieutenant, and he was with the 82nd Company, which is I Company, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines. And he went all the way in training here at Quantico, and went to France, and he went to Verdun, and he went to Belleau Wood, and he was killed in action on the night of June 6th of 18 out near Hill 181. And for his actions that day, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, Navy Cross, Silver Star, Purple Heart. And he's still buried out there at Aimorn with his men. So when we go out on tour, we go to Aimar American Cemetery out there at Belleau. I always go out there and pay my respects because we were just out there in November, and I know Pauline, who's one of the French battlefield interpreters out there. Really nice lady. If you guys ever get a chance to get out there, find Pauline. And I met her, and she didn't know who I was, and she didn't know who my great grandfather was. And I took her out to the headstone, and she goes, "Wow!" And she had a bunch of this kind of a cool story. So she got the sand, put it there, got a picture with him. Then she had a bunch of school kids from Chateau Thierry, and they were over there by the hunting lodge, and I got to talk to them and told them the story about what happened to him. And the kids, even you always hear stories about the French, they don't really care. Well, they do, especially around that area, Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood, that's kind of sacred to them. And the kids were really, really, interested in the story. And so that's how I had to live, grew up with that. Then when growing up as a kid, I've been studying the second division, since the late 70s, and it culminated into like I told you in the podcast we did with Bourmont. It goes all the way back, as a kid, and then when I enlisted in the military, especially in the Army, after I got out of Benning, got assigned to my first unit, the my company commanders and first sergeants, telling the battalion commanders, "Hey, I got this guy here, man. I mean, he's smart as a whip." And the colonel was like, "We could have an opening as a unit historical officer. Would you be able to take it?" Yeah, more like yeah. And it just blew up from there. And like I said, when we did the podcast for Bourmont, I mean, I went to Normandy in '94 with 4th Division. I've gone to other special events. Being a historical officer for 101st Airborne Division, 2nd Infantry Division, 4th 10th Mountain Division, and I really enjoyed it because it opened up a lot of doors into the historical community. I got a lot of friends that I have to this day. So, and dealing with Pete and John, Walt Ford, Mike Miller, then it opened up other doors to other historians that are very close and dear to my heart. Kevin Selden, Gilles Laurent out in France. I tell everybody, if you go out to France, go find Gilles. Gilles is the French version of me. I mean, and I've known Gilles for a long time, and I have the highest and deepest love for that man, for what he does out there. And of course, my little minion, James Patrick Gregory from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And yeah, working with James has been an interesting couple of years, and it's taken us down some rabbit holes we never thought we would go. And one of the not too long ago, I was talking to somebody, and they actually have a name for James and I. They call us the G&G brothers.
Nice.
Because we just have this nasty habit of just going in there and uncovering stuff. Of course, with James, dealing with the article that we did on 4 October with 5th Marines, just south of Saint-Étienne, the box. Mm-hmm. And of course, the latest book that we just came out with, dealing with the other 16 that were in Alvin, York, and at Chatel Cherie on 8 October of 18. And we've got a couple other projects coming down the road here pretty soon. So, but working with James has been an adventure, to say the least. And like I told you, in the podcast, if anything ever happened to me, James has already had that torch ready to go. I mean, he's just waiting to get out the gate. But it's like, no, you go. Anything doing with the 2nd Division, you're in the back, boy. You're in the back. But yeah, it's been great working with everybody.
Yeah.
So, but but yeah, like I said, dealing with the second division, yeah, that has been my forte per se. And I mean, I got people contacting me all the time. I've got collectors, historians, researchers. It's great to have that. Say, Steve, can you tell me about this guy, either soldier, Marine, Navy pharmacist mate that were there, and it's paid off well.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Like, so 2ID or second division for the time period we're talking. Like, we'll zoom out a bit here,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about the formation of the division. So if I recall correctly from my Soldier of the Month boards a quarter of a century ago, 2ID was formed overseas in France. Is that okay? So that's correct. So how did that come about? Were the regiments already there, and then
So what happened was once the war kicked off in in April 17, the Army had already was prior to World War One. The U.S. Army, after the Spanish-American War, they started messing around with coming up with the full division concept, where it's like the precursor to combined arms. Where prior to World War One, and it kind of didn't really take effect during the Spanish-American War, but after the Spanish-American War, like, okay, hey, we got to get away from the old concept where we just have a bunch of infantry regiments, and you have artillery from assigned to it just for a specific period, then they get pulled back. So once the war started in 17, the first division had already left, and the Army had come up with its TO&E of 1917. To have a basic concept, learning from the lessons that they've been seeing the Brits, when they're in France. So, like I said, first division goes off. Then with them, 5th Marine Regiment, which they had just got back from the Caribbean. They were down there, and the way the Marine Corps worked was they would have ad hoc battalions and regiments, take them from barracks detachments and ships detachments, throw them together, make a battalion or a regiment. And once they were done for that Pacific mission, they'd go back to the States and disband back to their ships or their barracks. But once war broke out, it was a mad scramble to get these guys back together again. And so they get the 1st Battalion is put back together again out of barracks detachments, ships detachments. And they go up to Quantico, and 1st and the 2nd Battalion's up there. And 3rd Battalion, which was just getting formed from guys who were enlisted from the war, get those guys together, get all 3 battalions of the 5th together with headquarters, and get them on the boat. They're going to be assigned to temporarily to the 1st Division, and off they go. In the meantime, so you had regular Army was really small back then, and the basic units for the 2nd Division, you had the 3rd Brigade, you had the 9th, which is an old regiment, goes back to 1799. It's been fighting ever since, on the rolls. They're down in Texas. 23rd is down in Texas as well. They had just got back from the Philippines about a year prior, down in southern Philippine Islands, down in Mindanao and that area up in there. And they were down there in Texas. And so they get the word, hey, get your guys, get everybody packed up, get them up to New York, and we'll start getting them shipped off to France. 2nd Engineer Regiment was the same way. They were at the time, they were down in Fort Bliss, and they get the notification, and everybody heads up to New York. And New York in that period was Camp Syracuse. Camp Syracuse was basically the staging area for units to go to France. And while they were there, they had the 4th and 5th Machine Gun Battalions were formed. Then you had yeah, yeah. 4th and 5th Machine Gun Battalions were formed. Then what was it? For the Field Artillery, which is the 2nd Field Artillery Brigade, and you had the 12th being formed at Fort Myer, Virginia. The 15th and the 17th were formed at Camp Syracuse from cadres from the 4th and 8th Field Artillery. 2nd Engineers were going to be backfilled once they got to France from units that were coming over. The 2nd Trench Mortar Battery was formed at Gettysburg from scratch. They would be assigned to the Field Artillery Brigade. Trains down at Camp Chickamauga, down in Georgia. Yeah, and so it was a mad rush to get these units overseas because the main focus was to get as many Americans as we can over there. So once they got over there, they just basically, okay, we're here, but we don't have an organization to go to. And so and on September 22nd of 17, that's when Tucker, I think it was Bliss, signed off on the order to have the 2nd Division formed. So all these units that didn't have a home were going to be coupled together to form a division there in France. And in the meantime, that's dealing with the Army side of things. Now, the 5th is already over there. They've been over there with the 1st Division since like late June, early July of 17. Then the 6th Marine Regiment was formed from scratch, and they had a cadre from officers and NCOs from ships detachments, like the Marine detachment for that came off the USS Connecticut was actually the nucleus for the 78th Company, 6th Marines. So then you had all these. Basically, the 6th was a wartime regiment that was formed from scratch, as well as the 2 companies of the 1st Machine Gun Battalion, which was the 77th and 81st. They would be formed later or reflagged as the 6th Machine Gun Battalion under the new divisional TOE for the Army. And they would all end up going to France in like late September, October and November of 17.
Yep.
And the last unit to go out was the 2nd Battalion of the 6th, and they left in January of 1918. So this, once they got the units together, October 26th of 1917, that's when the official date for the 2nd Division was formed. So Bourmont, France, beautiful place. Got a really nice memorial there for the 2nd Division, and I highly recommend anybody goes out there to see it. It's beautiful country.
Beaumont, where is that? Does that fall near? I'm unfamiliar with that Beaumont. I know there's a Beaumont village on the Verdun battlefield, but obviously that's not the place. Is this one like near?
No, God. Yeah, I haven't been out there in a while. Oh God.
Sorry to put you on the spot, man.
No, yeah, it's not over by the Vosage area. It's not, because that's where we're. Yeah, I think it is over by the Vosage area, I think. Yeah, okay. It's BOR. Yeah, Bourmont. Not Beaumont, where there's another place similar to it that's up in Meuse, Oregon.
Okay.
So
nice.
If I remember right, I think yeah,
and I can look it up too, and even put it in the show notes. So no problem.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. So I'm just remembering this now. So we got 9th Infantry, 23rd Infantry. That's going to be the 3rd Brigade for the 2nd Division. Then we got 5th and 6th Regiments.
Yeah.
That's going to be the 4th Brigade Marine. So real quick, just for gosh, I haven't thought of this in years, but for anyone who may be listening, who is an old one, so the 9th Infantry, I think they used to be called the Manchus.
Still are. Yep, Manchus. Yep, they still are.
So for any Manchus listening, keep up the fire. So
that and 23rd First Battalion, 23rd is still with 2ID. They're
Oh,
they're with
really?
3rd Brigade.
That's super cool. That's super
Yeah,
cool.
so they're still around. Um,
Nice.
yeah.
To go off.
So, yeah. So the division structure for what they had, Mike.
Yeah.
So you had so headquarters. You had headquarters troop.
Yep.
Division. Then you had what was it for 3rd Brigade? So you had 9th, 23rd Regiment, infantry regiments, 5th Machine Gun Battalion,
Okay.
4th Brigade Marine. Then you had 5th and 6th Marine Regiment, 6th Machine Gun Battalion. 4th Battalion was a divisional machine gun battalion. They
Okay.
were under operational control of the division commander. Then Field Artillery Brigade, you had 12th, 15th, and 17th Field Artillery. So you had 2 light, which were 75s.
Yep.
And then what was it? 17th was heavy, which is 155. Then you had the division trains. You had 2nd MP Company, ammunition trains, the field hospitals, ambulance companies, bakery companies. It still amazes me to this day because you and I are both old soldiers. The current 21st century or 20th, 21st century divisional TO&E. You see these, division. They're not that big. They're really not compared to 1918.
Right.
1918, a square division, U.S. Army square division. These things were huge. You're talking 25 to 28,000 personnel in a division. These things were monsters on 2 legs, literally.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
They
definitely.
were huge. People, you talk to officers and senior NCOs, and you tell them about what the divisional structure was back then. They're like, oh my god! It's like, yeah, it's like you think being a brigade or division commander's got its problems. Try being a brigade commander in 1918, trying to wield this thing. It's humongous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. Real quick aside here. So obviously the anybody who knows the symbol of the second division is the what we've traditionally called the Indian head. So if you're watching the YouTube version, the hat I'm wearing, it's got the divisional insignia on it. So just as a quick aside, Steve, where did we get that as the symbol for the division?
It goes all the way back to prior to the division going to Verdun, and there's a lot of myth and legends about this. Of course, the divisional insignia, it's a black shield with a white star and colored Indian head in the middle. And there's always been there's myth and legend surrounding this thing. And the best way I could describe it was there was a contest coming up because some of the Americans that saw the BEF having their divisional insignia, and they wanted something. Our guys wanted something to signify, hey, this is who this unit is. So that way, passing a road, you're coming down a road, you see, this symbol on a truck or a staff car or motorcycle dispatch rider, you know who it is. So prior to the division going up to Verdun, they had a contest, and over at the oh god, who was it? It was Sergeant what was it? Sergeant Louis B. Lundy came up with a design, and Sergeant John Kenny, both were with second ammunition trains. Lundy was out of A Company, and Kenny was out of B Company. And one guy, I think it was Lundy, had the what was it for the Indian, and Kenny had the star, and it was like 2 separate, it's like, hey, drawings. And the officer in charge is like, hey, why don't we just take these things and just merge them together? And it's what came out. So you had the Indian and the star. Now, each one represents a certain fighting characteristic or a symbol. Most of the units that came out that were regular Army, like I said, the 923rd, 2nd Engineers, second trains, they all came up out of Texas. So that the White Star, there's two stories. One is represents the Star of Texas in the Texas state flag, or the star from the American flag. And the Native American is represent the fighting spirit of the Americans, because we've always Americans, wherever we go into combat, we play by our own rules. I mean, it's just the way it is, but it's that fighting aggressive spirit.
Yep.
That that we have. And the shield represents unity and valor, and the black. And I've heard this throughout the years. Why the shield is black is to commemorate the mourning of all the dead that we lost in France in 1918.
Oh wow!
So that's what means. So yeah, so you have the White Star, either from this, for the Texas state flag or the American flag, the Native American, for the fighting tenacity of the American spirit, the shield for loyalty and protection, and the black is to commemorate all the losses the division had in France. Black is for mourning.
Wow. Folks, I just want to highlight that Steve just told us that entire story with no notes. So this is
there is none. No notes.
Level of knowledge this man carries in his head, man. It's astounding.
I know. I'm telling you, man. James, when I'm talking to him on the phone, it's like, God, shut up. Just shut up.
We'll have to.
I'll get on the phone with him, and he's like, I know it's probably on his end too. He's like, God, please stop talking.
Yeah, Steve is mimicking holding the phone well away from his ear, while James is listening to him. So, all right. So, I think you already talked about it, but the Marine Brigade, was attached to a United States Army division primarily for I don't know if convenience is the right word, but because it needed a parent division and to fall within a structure, correct?
Yeah. Right. So, like I said, you had when the first division went over, so you had the fifth, kind of became their fifth wheel. Once they got in the first division, got to France, they kind of got division commanders like, well, Pershing wasn't too happy with Marines being in France because he wanted it as an all army show.
Really?
But the problem was we were so short-handed on the Americans on combat, experienced individuals that they really needed them. So, like I said, the fifth is detached from the first, and they get put on, guard duty, down in Saint-Nazaire, Bordeaux, then they're individual companies. Then that was 3rd Battalion of the 5th. 1, 5, and 2, 5 get sent to Gondricourt and Mandricourt training areas.
Okay.
To go train with the French Blue Devils, the French Alpine Chasseurs.
Yep.
So they're training with them. It's just basically keep them occupied.
Mm-hmm.
One company actually from 1-5, which is the 67th Company, which is D Company, they got detached. They got the best duty of all. They ended up going up to Southampton to the AEF port of embarkation, debarkation there. And they were there for months, and they loved it. I mean, you can't beat that. Hey, you're going to go to England for a couple, about a couple months. Like, hey, I'm going.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. But in the meantime, the 5th, the 6th Machine Gun Battalion and 6th Marines are being formed to Chronicle for service with in France. So Pershing is like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Bring them over. Then they'll be under Army control, and we'll brigade them with the 5th, and there'll be a maneuver brigade for this newly formed 2nd Division. And that's one of the other things as well, spilling the myth and rumors or legends, whatever, that the Marine units that had went to France, I'm just going to focus on the 2nd Division, 5th and 6th regiments and the 6th Machine Gun Battalion. Once, when they were still in the States, they belonged to the Department of the Navy. Once they set foot on that transport and that transport pulled out of continental waters, they belonged to the U.S. Army. And I get a lot of heartache from Marines. Like, it's like, yeah, it's Bella, right? No, guys, you belong to the Army. That was the deal that was written between Joseph Daniels, Newton Baker, and General Pershing. Okay. That once those units left the continental United States, if they were Marine Corps, they belonged to the United States Army. In a discussion, that's the deal. So they had to, they're like, okay, we'll play the game. So, but once those units left, they were officially under United States Army control.
Interesting. So there's an episode coming out on this Sunday where we're talking about the main topic of discussion is the French Army during World War One. But one of the guests there was James Taub, who also dispelled some myths about U.S. Marines. So
oh yeah.
So that my podcast is going to get set on fire with
hey, welcome to my world.
But just for all you Marines out there, we love you guys. Please understand that. And
but yeah, once the 6th machine gun and 6th regiment got into France, they automatically went up to Bourmont in Dunblane. So they're up there training, and then it was a fight to get the 67th Company back down from Southampton into with the rest of the 5th Marines, and they didn't get back to almost before they took off over Verdun. They were that's how long they were up in England. They were there for a couple months.
Okay, yeah.
So
awesome. So most of the time when I think of the 2nd Division AEF during World War One, I think of it being commanded by Major General John Lejeune, the Marine commander. But that wasn't always the case. So who commanded the division initially?
Oh, that's the other thing that gets thrown out there. That John Archer, Lejeune was the very first Marine to command a division, Army division in France. That's not true. When the division was formed, the senior officer that was there to assume divisional command was Brigadier General Charles A. Duyan, U.S. Marine Corps. He was the regimental commander for the 5th Marine Regiment.
Okay.
And he had just been promoted to Brigadier General. And when the official notification came down and said, yes, you guys are going to be formed on this date, Friday, October 26, 1917, you will assume command of the division until we get a suitable, Army officer up in there to command the division. So our division commander, it's there in Korea. You walk into the new division headquarters there down at Camp Humphreys. They got all the division commanders hanging pictures on the wall. Charles A. Duyan, Brigadier General, U.S. Marine Corps, is 1st Division Commander, 2nd Infantry Division, and he once assumed the command of the division. He was for the time period that, he had the division. He was a stickler for making sure these guys were trained. I mean, he walked around. You want to know what these guys were doing, what your job was, and then when General Omar Bundy officially became the division commander, General Duyan bucked back down to 4th Brigade commander, and he went back and he actually took them to Verdun. And it's kind of a sad ending with how things turned out, because General Pershing was a very stickler for details dealing with officers. And if you did not meet up to his standards, you were gone. They sent you back to the States. And that's exactly what happened to General Duyan. And he went back to the States, but he was, he did see action at Verdun. He did, and he ended up being awarded the Army and Navy Distinguished Service Medals for what he did. But unfortunately, he died of influenza a couple months later, right after he got back. So it's always been a historical what if had he stayed, just to get the brigade to Belleau Wood, see how things would have turned out. So, but yeah, so with the 2nd Division, that's who our very first division commander is, Charles A. Union. Then you had Omar Bundy take over, took him to Belleau Wood.
And Steve,
and General James G. Hubbard.
By Omar Bundy, pardon my ignorance here, is this the same World War II Omar Bundy?
No, this is World War One.
Okay.
Yeah, General Omar. He was an old serving line officer.
Okay.
West Point. Yeah, he was Indian Wars, Spanish American War, and he's basically there just to fill the slot because, like I said, Pershing. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm glad we're doing this. Everybody thinking Blackjack had his way of dealing with things, and
right.
One, he didn't like having Marines in France, and number two, he really didn't. If you look at the division's history, the 2nd Division got loaned to the French quite a few times. It's basically like, hey, put you over there. You do your thing. We'll let you loan to the French. And he's like, I got the rest of the AEF to run, but I'm hoping that you do a podcast down the road dealing with Pershing because he is a very unique and controversial figure, and he really is. And if you start digging into some of the stuff that he did in France, you're like, how the hell did he end up staying in AEF command? But I'm just looking at this from the point of view from the 2nd Division.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Blackjack. Yeah, he had his moments.
Yeah, no, I actually most recently I just did an episode on Hunter Liggett, and before him I did 2 episodes on Pershing.
Really good.
And so we talked about Pershing, like his background, and he was a hard charging guy, bit of a
he was
bit of a micromanager, and but
that's putting it polite, but yeah.
And then the good thing is that I think as we learned in leadership, you have to know that as a leader you can't do everything yourself. You have to learn to delegate and trust your subordinates. Yeah, so really glad that Pershing, by mid-October was like, okay, I can't run First Army and run the AEF at the same time. I've got to hand this off, and he hands it off to Hunter Liggett, who is extremely capable. So yeah, we've talked about him. I'm sure there's more that we are going to talk about Pershing. Of course, I mean he still remains a huge part of the Meuse-Argonne.
Right. Well, there's dealing with Pershing because give an example. There's 2 Marine officers in France. George W. Hamilton, who was the commanding officer for 49th Company, which is B Company 1-5, and 2nd Lieutenant Clifton B. Cates, who would end up eventually becoming the Commandant of the Marine Corps,
right?
Korea. Both were recommended and received Distinguished Service Cross twice for their actions, and I've actually seen their Medal of Honor recommendations for their actions at Belleau Wood and for both. And Pershing was adamant, adamant about not giving and awarding a Medal of Honor to a Marine officer. That's a travesty all on its own. And all of us Marine, 4th Brigade historians, we get together, and that's something that we always talk about because, like what happened with Clifton Cates, going into Brest on June 6th, and the actions of Hamilton on Hill 142 on the morning of June 6th, those warrant a Medal of Honor. I mean, hands down for what they did, during that time period, especially with Hamilton leading the 5th across the Meuse River on the night of the 10th and 11th of November. And they're just getting hammered. But he was there in the thick of it with his Marines, but yet never got the Medal of Honor. Neither one of them ever did. But you had enlisted Marines get it.
Right.
Kukela, Kelly, Stockham, Jansen / Hoffman, enlisted and NCOs would get it. but no Marine officer was ever awarded the Medal of Honor for their action in France. None.
That's too bad. That's too bad.
I think that's the way Blackjack played things, and he
Yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah. The AEF, I'm always still learning a lot, and I pretty much the biggest thing that I become aware of are the gaps in my knowledge and the leadership of the AEF and the relationships of all of those officers. Like that is a whole world there that needs to be
Looked at.
looked at much deeper. It's really interesting, really interesting.
Well, and that's one thing I love working with James, because we'll go in there and we'll look at subjects, and that nobody's ever really they it's kind of glanced in kind of off to the side, but everybody's focused on the bigger picture. But like with James and I, we'll go in there and we'll look at the smaller picture and how it played up into the bigger scheme of things.
Right.
Yeah, it's paid off in dividends. It really has.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, second division, their first engagements and combat operations against the Germans on the Western Front. How did they do?
They did pretty well. So the second division's at Bourmont training area, and in late February, word comes down that they're going to be assigned to the French up in Verdun. So the division sends advance parties up there to work, coordinate with the French. I forgot who was up there in that area. So they're like, yeah, you're going to be, detached and assigned to the French for operational, get you. Basically, it was a blooding period to get yourselves ready for combat. So the second division begins their movement in early March of 18 as a whole. Let me back up. So prior to going to Verdun, the Second Field Artillery Brigade, they're training at what the hell's that French training area? Valhorn. Valhorn. It's an artillery training area, so they're up there doing their thing, and the maneuver brigades are down in Bourmont, Dunblane, so they're going through the motions, getting their stuff ready. Then, like I said, the division starts moving up to Verdun. Then first casualties of the division happened at the railhead there at Dugny. Germans saw them coming in, so they hit the railhead there. A couple of guys get wounded. Then the division itself starts moving into the sector, and it's their first time they've really experienced something like this, because they hear stories, Brits or other units have been around there. So yeah, it's not glamorous. It's going to be something to experience. And so once they get set in the sector, third brigades in their area, fourth brigades down in theirs, they go through the motions. So you start rotating units out. Hey, you're going to spend X amount, maybe a week or two on the front lines, and you back up the support lines. And from there, you go back to the rear, rest up, whatever. You go start the rotation period all over again. So they're getting used to lice, rats, snow, mud, rain, patrolling at night, what's incoming, what's outgoing. And so they get used to that. Then probably about mid-April, that's when things start to take notice. And so while this is going on, you and I both know that the Germans were taking units that were just coming back from the Eastern Front, bringing them out west. And these units would be specifically trained to assault a position. And these guys were really, they came up with the name stormtrooping. And the other day, Mike, was kind of funny because we were, when we were coordinated to see somebody on a Facebook page was that talking about, hey, was there any Americans units that ever faced, German stormtrooping? Oh yeah. The two units that actually got it was around April 14th. 3rd Battalion of the 9th Infantry, that was under Hiram Barris. Hiram was a regular Marine officer, got the Medal of Honor in the Philippines in 1900. He ends up being, because what happens is there's an overabundance of Marine officers in the division, because a lot of these guys just, they want to go to France. This is the big show, they want to go.
Sure.
So they go to France, and they're like, we don't got a home for these guys. So so Hiram ends up being assigned to the 9th Infantry. He gets the 3rd Battalion, and it's kind of like, all the officers and NCOs are like, wait a minute, we got a Marine here in charge of us. And at first there's kind of friction there, but Hiram put him through the paces. And Hiram's nickname was Hiram Bear, Hiram. And he put him through the paces. And by the time he got through with them, they were, they had a lot of love and respect for Hiram. But anyways, they were already starting getting reports that there's some special German units rolling around there. They hadn't made contact yet. Then all hell breaks loose on April 14th. The 74th Company, who's back at Camp Beauchamps, they get, they're in their Adrian huts. They get hit with a gas and artillery strike. And the company's damn near wiped out from gas casualties. And there's two, in fact, this is the first instance that two Navy corpsmen, Kingsbury and Fisher, are awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for their actions, getting these gas inhalated Marines out of the huts and get them into safety. Then at the same time, there's a German stormtrooper party or raid that happens, and they hit 3rd Battalion, and the Germans know that there's an American unit around there. At first they thought they were Canadians. Then it's like, no, these guys are Americans, and because their Marines uniforms and American uniforms stand out. Then all hell breaks loose. A little bit after 12:45, going about 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when all hell breaks loose, and German stormtrooper party goes in there, and they're thinking these guys are a pushover. Well, they weren't, and it gets down to hand fighting there in the trenches. And there's an account that is told that there was a mess sergeant that the Germans had broken through the lines, and they're coming after him. This mess sergeant pulls out a meat hack or a cleaver and comes after the Germans. And I think he's awarded for gallantry for what he did. He actually killed like a couple of them with a meat cleaver. And so fighting lasts for about an hour or two. There wasn't really that many. We had about 19 guys from 3-9 that got captured. Most of them from the medical detachment got captured. So it wasn't really big, but the Germans suffered losses as well. So it was basically a tit for tat. Then about a couple days later, then the 2nd Battalion of 5th Marines, they get hit down by Tressevaux, and there's a patrol that went out there, and stormtrooper hit our guys, and it's basically a free for all there in no man's land. And one of the Marine officers is captured. One of the Marines goes back in there, kills the German who's dragging him off, and pulls him back in. And he ends up getting the Distinguished Service Cross. Wow. But yeah, so it's basically a tit for tat there in April. And so
now, Steve, sorry, I should have asked this earlier. Is this going on? Like, is this Chemin de Dam sector, or like down by Saint Miel, like down?
No, this is in Verdun. This is in the Toulon and Trion sector.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, talking about where Chemin de Dams, because that's when the 26th got hit.
Right.
And it's like I say, April was the month that the Germans were, they knew Americans were there, and they're not dumb or stupid, because they've got their intel. They're still, sympathizers or whatever, spies out there watching, and there's words getting back. So yeah, there's a new unit here. It might be Americans, and it's basically the 2nd and the 26th Division ended up being guinea pig test beds to see how these stormtrooper tactics, work. And like I said, with the 2nd Division, because the 2nd Division actually was the very first AEF unit to get baptized by stormtroopers. And it's like, okay, because basically the Germans want to say, okay, let's see how this works. Then when on April 20th, when the 26th is down there in Chesterfield and the 102nd, they get hit hard.
Right.
And that's a whole different story all in itself. There's some things that happened that infuriated Pershing. I mean, yeah, because he's Pershing, even though the 2nd was loaned out to the French, he still kept tabs on it. So he knew what was going on.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, hey, tit for tat, whatever. Okay, we got some of theirs, they got some of ours. Okay, great. It was down to a small level. But when the 102nd got hit at Chesterfield and they lost and they got photographed, oh man. Yeah, John J. Pershing was not pleased at all. I mean, at all. And like I said, I saw the podcast
with Jonathan
the 103rd.
Yep.
Yeah, great, man, great. And when I was listening to it, when he was talking about why Pershing had a dislike for the 26th Division, yeah, that's a whole different story all in its own too. Yeah, that's a whole separate podcast. But so like I said, yeah, the 2nd Division fared out pretty well for itself during its time in Verdun. So in James, matter of fact, James goes more into depth on the article we did on the 4th Brigade at Verdun. It was very well researched by us. And speaking of that, here's another debunking myth and legend. The term devil dog, that's where it actually originated from. It has nothing to do with Belleau Wood, never did. And the story is there was a bunch of newspaper reporters that happened to be in the area where the 2nd Division was at. And they were covering, some of the actions that, the 2nd Division, in particular the 4th Brigade, were doing. And we don't know for sure if it was something that was made up by them or whatever, because supposedly the myth and legend is the Germans were so honored by the fighting tenacity of the Marines, they gave them the nickname Devil Dogs. But James and I, pretty much laid it down that no, it has nothing to do with Belleau Wood. It never did. So this is in April of 18. Belleau Wood is in June of 18, which is 2 months later down the road.
Right.
So
right.
we even found newspaper clippings from April 1918 that states, yes, Marines, coined the term devil dog by foe. So that's, like I said, we had to spill that myth. But for officially, and like I said, the article that we did is published in Marine Corps History, their journal. Yes, the term devil dog has nothing to do with Belleau Wood. Nothing. Period. End of discussion.
I think James and I discussed that when we talked about the Marines at Verdun article.
Yeah.
I want to say we did.
Yeah.
At least I hope we did.
Yeah, you did.
Awesome. So 2nd Division. So it sees combat like southeast of Verdun, and then during the summer, the late spring and summer during the German offensives, you've got it fighting at, of course, Belleau Wood in that area. And then we've got 2nd Marne in July of 1918. And of course, the podcast here has covered the 2nd Division's actions at Bourmont on the Champagne front in October of 1918. So what I want to do now is 2nd Division gets pulled out of Bourmont.
Yep.
Pretty much bled out. It's replaced by the brand new 36th Texas Division. Yep. But from there, so we're looking at like early October 1918. Now we haven't gotten there yet in the podcast, but we will soon. The 2nd Division is also going to take part in the Meuse-Argonne offensive just a few weeks after it saw all this action on blank Mont. So
Right.
when does the 2nd Division come into the Meuse-Argonne front?
They come in on the final phase of it, because that was one of the things that First Army with under Liggett and General Pershing, because they wanted to finally break the back of the German front there, because they already knew that the Germans were retrograding back towards the Meuse River.
Yep.
Yeah, they wanted to get as many combat hardened divisions in there as possible, because first and second phase on the Meuse-Argonne, it literally bled the AEF dry. It did. I mean, the 2nd Division was hurting, but the entire AEF was, as a whole, was hurting. I mean, 79th is shot to pieces. 35th is shot to pieces.
Right.
42nd is getting. They're having having a rough time of things. All the divisions that were there. 5th Division is bled out. 3rd Division's bled out. 32nd's bled out. So I mean, the whole entire AEF, both first and second phase. I mean, these divisions are just like, it's nonstop. So I mean, boom, boom, boom. I mean, they're just getting hammered.
Right.
But so Pershing wanted to get the 2nd back. So when the 2nd got pulled off the lines, they were still under French operational control for about a week or two, and they were doing at a rest, in an area rest, and they get orders would be issued, and it would be countermanded. Guys would go from point A to point B. It's like, hey, we don't need you here, go back. Okay, so they get about a week or two. So they're picking, they're getting themselves bandaged, cleaned up and all that. They're starting to receive replacements coming in, and then about late October of 18, they're moved up to the area around Essermo, in the staging area just south of town.
Okay.
And that's where the Marines and soldiers from the 3rd and 4th Brigades start getting small quantities of Browning automatic rifles, because like we talked about earlier in podcast with Bourmont,
right,
that's where they actually saw them. So there was a unit that came over from the States. I forgot which one. They literally got their BARs, stripped out, taken from them, and these were handed out to the soldiers and Marines of the 2nd Division. There's not enough to go around. So basically, your most experienced, show shot gunner that's been around for a while, he got a BAR with a belt, and assistant gunner got his equipment. But there's enough there for each company to have, not one per squad, but maybe like 1 or 2, per platoon. So they get these issued out outside of Essermo. Then prior to going into the Meuse-Argonne, then this story actually happened. So they're under 5th Corps. So they get back under American control, 1st Army. Then they're under operation control of 5th Corps, which is under General Charles P. Summerall. And
oh boy,
this really happened. Charles P. Summerall, he's one of Pershing's boys per se.
Yes, he is.
So yeah, this really happened. Yeah. So they're the guys from the 2nd Division, the 4th. He goes to each of the brigades, right? So they had this big division meet, big powwow. So Charles P. Summerall rides in on a white horse. This really happened. Rides in on a white horse. Like thinks he, here, you got all these combat hardened, doughboys and leathernecks out there looking at this guy's like, what the hell is this guy doing? So he stops, jumps off the horse, gets on top of this tree stump, and he's given this, we're gonna go get him, we're gonna take it to the enemy, blah blah blah. And you got all these soldiers and Marines looking at him like,
right.
I'm like, and there's one account visible from both Army and Marine Corps officers, like, I don't know what the hell this guy is talking about, man. I wish this guy would just leave us alone. We already know what we got to do. The 2nd Division didn't care for Charles P. Summerall. They did. They hated him. they absolutely hated the guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and there was a reason the Doughboys used to call Summerall von Summeraltz, like
yeah,
a German name.
yeah, he was to put it bluntly, he was a pompous ass. Is what he was. They got because you get all these guys. The division just come off the lines at Bourmont.
Right.
They went through hell a couple of weeks prior, and they know rumors already getting around that the Germans are on their backs against the wall, and there might be an armistice coming down to end this thing. So word's already getting around. So, but the second gets their marching orders, and so you've got the 80th Division on the on the left flank. You have the 89th Division on the right flank, seconds in the middle, and they know that this is the end. This is the end game right here. So so the 42nd is up there just south of Landres-St. George's.
Yep.
And the second division goes in there, relieves them, and the scheme of maneuver was to have the 6th Marines for the division front on the left flank, 5th Marines in the center, 23rd on the right flank, and they were going there to take Landres-St. George's. In the meantime, there was a special detachment, which was Company D, which was the 95th Company, which is D Company, 1st Battalion, 6th Marines. They were detailed as liaison company to work with the 80th Division on the left flank, and they went in. Their objective was, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Imécourt, Imecourt,
Yeah, Imécourt. Yep.
Yeah, Imécourt. That was they were tasked to take that and work with the 80th Division on the left flank.
Okay.
So on the morning of November 1st, they go in there and they hit the jump off lines and they're going forward. And the Germans put up a stiff resistance going into Landres-St. George's and going up towards Landres-St. George's, going towards Banville. And division they suffered quite a few casualties going up in there and going towards the Imécourt Heights. And so the division gets up to just north of Banville. They're there for about a day or two. And it's like November 2nd. Yeah, November 2nd. They stayed there for about a day or two to get get things coordinated. Then on the November 4th, and I got to give the credit for this one. This one. So 3rd Brigade takes the lead, and what they did was on the night of November 4th. This was surprising that nobody ever thought about this before. So the division objective is going towards Bourmont, and Beaumont, not Bourmont, but Beaumont.
Gotcha.
So 3rd Battalion, 9th Infantry is leading out, and what they do is they get all the guys that are American German speaking born kids or guys, and what they do is they put these guys at the head of the column, and these guys are told, hey, go in there, start speaking German until these guys are surrendered. They want them to think that these guys are, another German outfit that's like, hey, look, the war's over. Hey, let's give up. It's exactly what they did.
Oh,
it's going towards, it's an action just south of Bourmont and going towards the Bois de Baville. And they pulled it off. They actually did. They didn't hardly take any casualties going in there. And all these Germans start coming out of the woods, with their hands up, coming out, and it's like, yeah. The thing is, when they get closer, they think they're Germans. Like, no, they're Americans. All these kids and these guys that are that are German, German American, they know how to speak the lingo. It's like, hey man, go back, hand them over to the MPs.
Right.
And so then there's a little tough fight going up towards Bourmont, which they end up capturing on November 4th. Then what happens is the 3rd Battalion of the 23rd, they end up going towards Laton. And the 23rd, 223 goes off to the left flank. 3rd Battalion goes off to the right flank. and the 9th and everybody else is coming in behind them.
Okay.
Then what's the interesting part of this whole story is the 1st Division is over there by Bourmont. Okay. Yeah, and they actually have because once Bourmont got captured, the 2nd Division actually sat on the Meuse River for like 2 or 3 days, for a couple of days. They sat there. So you have the 89th on their left flank or the right flank, then the 80th gets pulled off. Then the 1st Division is on their left flank. Then the 1st Division actually has Bourmont and Mouzon. It's in their sector. And that's when General Pershing has this adamant idea, because he's hell bent for leather, to get Sedan and as the prize before the armistice ends. And so what he does is he orders the 1st Division, because that's his Pershing pets.
Right.
They go there and take the prize. So they get pulled off the lines, and the 2nd Division is now pushed over to the left flank to cover what the 1st Division had just left. So you had it's irony, because had the 1st Division stayed where they were at, they would have been across the Meuse River and gone in towards Sedan, but they didn't. But like I said, that's probably for another podcast, talking about the 1st Division and that whole fiasco. Going up towards Mouzon or towards Sedan, and they never crossed the Meuse River, where the 2nd Division is now assumed responsibility for that sector. So the main effort was going to be at Mouzon. So you had the 6th Marines and the 23rd Infantry that were going to be the main effort. The 9th was going to be support of the main effort there. The 5th Marines were going to be crossing the Meuse at Bourmont. That was actually going to be a diversionary assault across the river. That was just to keep them occupied while the main show was going to go on at Mouzon.
Yep.
But once the 3rd Brigade with the 6th Marines attached, they got in, on the western bank of the Meuse. They're looking right across at Mouzon. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Mike. I mean, you can see the église there, and I got a picture of it. That hasn't changed at all. They're looking right at the church there in town. That bridge is destroyed, but the Germans have got all machine gun emplacements along the east bank of the Meuse. I mean, they're just hammering, with machine gun fire and artillery fire.
Yeah.
The second engineers are trying to get pontoon bridges built and thrown across the river for the main assault. That never happens. And it got to the point, it's like, okay, General Lejeune has got to make make a call, because he's getting it from higher, from General Summerall, saying, you will cross this river. That's the irony of the whole thing. Everybody in the AEF, not just the 2nd Division, but all the units that were along the Meuse River, the 42nd, the 89th, the 90th, the 2nd, all these guys knew that the war was about ready to end in a matter of hours. Word had traveled like Western Union about the armistice that was going to be taking place at what do you call it, the armistice clearing,
Compiègne.
So they already knew what was going to happen.
Yep.
But General Summerall is coming down on top of General Lejeune, and General Lejeune's got to make he's got to make this, he's got to do it. And so he goes to Hamilton and say, all right, guys, here's the deal. Regardless of the situation, we still got to do this. And Major Hamilton, says the character of a Marine officer. He cared and loved about his men, but he's still got a mission. He's gonna know. He knows he's gonna lose. He knows it's about ready to happen. But regardless of the situation, he's gonna go forward with his men, and he did. Right. He led from the front. So on the 9th of November 10th, about 9 o'clock, Tiller goes off, and second engineers, they're out, they're throwing pontoon bridges across. You've got C Company, 9th Infantry, they're providing support, on the West Bank, and 5th Marine Regiment, First Battalion, Major Hamilton, he's going across. He's leading by example. They're going across that pontoon bridge, and they're getting hammered. I mean, from three sides. And they cross that river. They're going into the Bois Elmo Gassiers, Cynical Farm. And you got Charlie Dunbeck talks about it in his book. He was a battalion commander for 2-5. They're coming in right behind Hamilton with 1-5. No, because Leroy Hunt, he had operation control of 1-5. He's taking them in, but Colonel Hamilton in front. 2-5's coming in behind them, and General Lejeune had already gotten with the division commander for the 89th Division because he could not pull units from Mouzon because that was going to be the main effort. So he had already coordinated with the 89th Division, and the division commander loaned out the 2nd Battalion of the 356, and that's under Mark W. Hanna, and they were the third element to go across the Meuse.
Okay.
And because Hanna and 2nd of 356, they once they come across, they're going towards the 89th Division. They're going towards Polilly. Then 1-5 and 2-5, they're coming up like that, and it's bloody. I mean, it's absolutely bloody, and they lost a lot of Marines there. And the furthest unit that ever got across the Meuse River and towards Sudan, and I love sticking this to the 1st Division, guys, I really do, and was the 66th Company, 1st Battalion, which is C Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. And they are the furthest American unit that ever got close to Sudan. And there's a boulder marker right off the D364 highway there. Okay. It was at Moulin-St. Hubert. It's right there. And matter of fact, I just saw it here a couple months ago. It's literally right there because there's a guardrail that's wrapped around it. That is the furthest unit of the 2nd Division in the entire AEF that ever got close to Sudan.
Oh, awesome.
And but they paid a price going across that river. They did. And the river ran red for days.
Man.
From the bodies that were floating in that river.
Damn.
I mean, there's one account that I have where there was a Navy corpsman that actually was a battalion dressing station right on the banks there on the Meuse River, and there's a corpsman. I think it was a pharmacist mate, 1st or 2nd class. But anyways, he got hit in the shoulder. He's working on a Marine that had a sucking chest wound.
Okay.
And in the meantime, there's another wounded Marine. He's literally half submerged in the river, in the reeds, and he literally pulls this guy out from drowning to death. Well, don't forget, and I can't make this up. I can't. This is how bad it was. But he's working. Like I said, he's working on. Like I said, this guy's hit. He's working on another wounded Marine, or he's working on a Marine. At the same time, he's reaching over and he's pulling this kid up out of the reeds to keep him drowning to death.
Wow.
All under fire.
Wow, that's harrowing stuff.
And it is. It's there. Like I said, there's stories about why it happened. Was it worth it? I can't put it into words. Pershing got raked over the coals after the war. He did, for what happened. He still has a lot of explaining to do. And for the record, the last U.S. Marine to die there was George Buddy. He was in the 17th Company, got a Navy Cross, Distinguished Service Cross for what he did. And he's officially the last U.S. Marine killed in combat within the last 30 seconds of the war.
Oh, okay.
So, like I said, you always hear the stories about, was it Gunther?
Yeah, Henry Gunther.
Yeah, Henry Gunther being the last. Mike, and the thing is, studying the AEF for X amount of years, I never believed that story, because the thing is, there were so many units going on. There was so much stuff going on, and there were units that are fighting. You don't have some officer or NCO sitting there looking at his watch like, Yeah, 15 seconds. Oh, by the way, Private Gregory, yeah, he's gone. Oh, yep, 5 minutes to arms. No, didn't happen like that.
Yeah.
And Henry Gunther's name just got pulled out of a hat. That's exactly what happened. We don't, because you're not considering the guys that were wounded, that were in a base hospital or a field hospital who expired. We don't know that.
Good
Like I
point.
said, for division, for the 5th, 4th Brigade, yeah, it was George Buddy. We know that for a fact. He was killed within the last 30 seconds, for the armistice went down. So, like I said, we don't really know who the last soldier was. We'll never know.
Right.
So,
Right.
it depends on interpretation.
Right. Right. So Second Division fights pretty hard in those last days, and then of course the war ends on November 11th. We get the ceasefire. So final question here, Steve, is how does or excuse me, what happens to the Second Division post-war? Are they part of the occupation?
Yeah. So what happens is they after the armistice is officially set in place, they don't have very much time to lick their wounds and feel sorry for themselves. They don't. So they have about a couple day rest period to get themselves together, and they start what's called the Long March going into Germany.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically following the remnants of the German Imperial Army back into Germany, and they go through Luxembourg, into into Belgium, and then they end up in Koblenz about the middle part of probably about December 18th. They end up in on the Rhine River Valley, and in the town of Koblenz, and headquarters 3rd Army is going to be their home for the next couple months.
Okay.
And they pull an occupation duty there. There's several selected divisions. You had the 1st Division, 2nd Division, 3rd Division, 32nd Division. There's a couple others that were picked by Pershing himself to represent, the main effort of the 3rd Army at Koblenz. But then you had other divisions that were like the 90th Division, 89th Division. They were guarding the lines of communication going up in there, up into Koblenz.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the 2nd Division, they were in Neuwald. That was in that area in Germany. They had small base camp set up there. I'll get the whole list of I can't even show you what it looks like, but they had battalion like 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines was at Honigen. Then you had smaller company camps or areas set up all within their divisional zone. One of the other things is the particularly the 4th Brigade, because was unique with them is they had what's called the Rhine River Patrol, and it was kind of fitting for them because you had Marines, some of these guys, or seagoing, Marines in the old days, and some of the officers. I got one picture of Gaines Mosley, who's on the SS Mouzon. He's at the helm of it. He's an old time, serving officer, been at sea for X amount of years. And the Rhine River Patrol, they were tasked to guard all the, and protect all the river traffic going down the Rhine River, and their station was at Andernach, and that was plum duty for those guys. And so 2nd Division stayed there until about June of 1919. Then because they wanted to make sure that everything was going to go according to plan with the Treaty of Versailles, which, by the way, everybody thinks World War I ended on November 11th, 19. It's not. No, World War I is officially ended in June of 1919.
That is correct. Yes.
Yes. Everybody thinks, oh my God, the armistice. No. World War I was officially ended. I think June 28th, 1919 is when the World War I officially ended.
Right.
At Versailles.
Right.
Versailles Act. That is the official end of World War I. Just November 11th was an armistice. But so after the treaty is signed, the units of the 2nd Division start to get their movement orders to head back stateside.
Okay.
So the elements of the 4th Brigade, once they get back to the States, they're released back to Department of Navy control. They go back down to Quantico. The bulk of them end up being sent home because most of them are all wartime Marines. The ones that stayed on for regular enlistments, they go off to either barracks duty or sea duty, or down in the Caribbean base down there. The bulk of the 2nd Division ends up in Camp Travis. Camp Travis, which is now part of Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And that would be their home all the way to about 1942, when they had to pick up and they had to go to Europe to take care of the 2nd act of World War I.
Right.
So,
right. Known as World War II.
That's what happened with the 2nd Division. So then, so they end up in Texas, and believe it or not, the 2nd Division is kind of irony when I say this, because it has a second part of this. When they were at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, back in the 20s, all the way to the late 30s, they ended up being an air landing division. They're actually trained to be an air landing division, which is irony, because when the colors came back from Korea in 64, 65, that's when they were at Fort Benning, which ended up being, they were trained the air mobile concept, which became eventually the 1st Cavalry Division. So the 2nd Division actually is the precursor to all air assault operations that the Army ever decided, except, you're doing it out of a C-47, and, go down to the early mid 60s, you're doing it out of a UH-1. So it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So a lot of history, being first at things, but I'm proud that I served with the 2nd Division. I will, when I leave this earth, I will have a, Indian head patch on my coffin, on my headstone. But they are my love, and couldn't ask for, better division to have been in combat with. I actually wear, the Indian head as a combat patch.
Oh, okay.
My last tour in Sandbox, I was with of all things, I was working with 4-9, which is the 4th Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, which actually, so I could actually say that, I did go to combat with 4th Brigade. So I actually have that honor as well. So it kind of follows down the family road there. But I am very privileged and honored to have served with them in Korea and in the Middle East.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Steve, this has been an awesome talk, and thanks for taking time out of the middle of your Friday to come on, man.
Okay, Mike, like I said, it's an honor and privilege to come back here with you. And like I said, if anybody wants to know more about the 2nd Division, and particularly the 4th Brigade, James Gregory, like I said, his publication, the article on the Marines at Verdun, and the actions at 4 October at the Box.
Yep.
Their Marine Corps journal. Also, you got the podcast here with you.
Correct.
They say we got James and I got some future projects coming down the road here.
Looking forward to them.
John Swift is coming out with the monograph on hopefully here at Soissons, because I know we talked about it last time.
Right.
So
right.
It's out here. But Mike, I want to thank you for everything, and dedicate this podcast to all the 2nd Division honks out there, and to my family members, my great grandfather, my great uncle, my father, and myself, who all wore the Indian head, for over 100 years. Second to none, brother.
That's awesome, man. Second to none. All right.